20 years of unwavering loyalty, sacrificing weekends, missing birthdays, pouring my soul into building their empire. Then, one morning, they discarded me like yesterday's trash in a cold conference room, citing restructuring. But as that door slammed shut on my career, I stumbled upon their darkest secret: financial crimes so devastating they could destroy everything. That night, working alone in my dark apartment with nothing but my laptop and 20 years of insider knowledge, I brought their entire kingdom crashing down. This is how I did it. My name is Clara Whitmore, and until that fateful Tuesday morning, I believed loyalty meant something in corporate America. For 2 decades, I'd been the backbone of Northbridge Financial Solutions' operations department in Riverton, arriving first, leaving last, treating their success as my own personal mission. The summons came at 9:47 a.m., an innocuous email from HR requesting my presence in conference room C. I remember checking my reflection in my phone screen, smoothing down my navy blazer, the same style I'd worn for 20 years. Professional. Reliable. Dependable Clara. Marcus Thornton, our CEO, sat at the head of the polished table, flanked by HR Director Jessica Mills and someone I didn't recognize, young, sharp-suited, with the hungry look of a corporate executioner. They didn't offer me coffee. They didn't ask me to sit, though I did anyway, my legs suddenly feeling like water. Clara, Marcus began, his voice carrying that practiced neutrality executives perfect when delivering bad news. We appreciate your long service to Northbridge, but the company is undergoing strategic restructuring. Strategic restructuring, those 2 words hung in the air like a death sentence. I'd heard them before, always directed at others, never at me. I was untouchable, or so I'd thought. The employee who knew where every file lived, who could recall policy changes from 15 years ago, who'd trained half the current management team when they were fresh college graduates. Your position has been identified as redundant, Jessica added, sliding a manila folder across the table. Effective immediately. Redundant? After 20 years, I'd been reduced to a single, crushing adjective. My throat constricted. I don't understand. Last month's performance review. The decision has been made. Marcus interrupted, already checking his phone. Security will escort you to clear your desk. You have 15 minutes. 15 minutes to pack up 2 decades. I wanted to scream, to demand explanations, to remind them of the nights I'd spent fixing their mistakes, the clients I'd saved, the millions I'd helped them earn. Instead, I heard myself asking, what about my health insurance? My daughter's surgery is next month. Cobra information is in your packet, Jessica replied, her manicured nails tapping against her iPad. You'll have 60 days to elect coverage. At market rates I couldn't afford without a job. They knew this. They didn't care. The walk to my desk felt like a funeral march. Colleagues averted their eyes, some from sympathy, others from fear, as if unemployment was contagious. Rachel, my assistant for 5 years, was already sitting at my desk, my personal items boxed and waiting. They'd planned this down to the minute. Security Officer Tom, whom I'd bought coffee for every Christmas, stood silent as I picked up the box. 20 years condensed into a cardboard container, my coffee mug reading, World's Best Mom. The photo from our department's 2010 Christmas party when we still had those. My collection of stress balls from various corporate wellness initiatives, and the small cactus that had somehow survived the fluorescent wasteland of our office. I'm sorry, Clara, Tom whispered as we reached the lobby. This isn't right. The January air hit my face like a slap. I stood on the sidewalk, holding my pathetic box, watching through the glass as the building continued its normal rhythm without me. Young employees, so young, had I ever been that young, bustled past, probably making half my salary, probably thinking they were different, special, irreplaceable. My phone buzzed. An email from IT. Your credentials have been deactivated. 20 years. And they'd erased me in less than 20 minutes. I didn't cry until I reached my car. Then, in the privacy of my decade-old Honda Civic, the reliable one I'd kept because I was practical, responsible Clara, I let the tears come. angry. Bitter tears that tasted like betrayal and fear, and the terrible realization that I'd given the best years of my life to people who saw me as nothing more than a line item to be deleted. But anger, I would soon learn, could be transformed into something far more powerful than tears. The drive home was a blur of red lights and honking horns I barely registered. My hands shook as I turned the key to my apartment, the same two-bedroom unit I'd been renting for 8 years because I'd been waiting for the right time to buy. Now there would be no right time. "Mom, why are you home?" My daughter Emma stood in the hallway, home from college for winter break. The concern in her eyes made my chest tighten. "Did something happen?" The words wouldn't come. How do you tell your 20-year-old daughter that the stability you'd promised her, the surgery she needed for her chronic condition, the future you'd carefully planned, all of it had evaporated in a 15-minute meeting? "They let me go," I finally managed, setting down the box that contained the remnants of my career. "Restructuring." Emma's face went pale. "But your insurance, my surgery. We'll figure it out." The lie tasted bitter. Cobra would cost $800 a month. My savings might last 3 months if we cut everything unnecessary, which meant everything. That evening, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Word traveled fast in Riverton's financial sector. Former colleagues texted variations of, "I'm so sorry," and "if you need anything," but nobody offered anything concrete. My sister called from Seattle, her voice thick with secondhand rage. "Sue them," she demanded. "Age discrimination, wrongful termination, something." "With what lawyer money?" I asked, staring at my laptop screen where I'd been calculating and recalculating our finances. Each calculation came up short. My best friend, Linda, came over with wine and righteous indignation. 20 years, Clara. You gave them 20 fucking years. I know. You missed Emma's recitals for quarterly reports. Worked through pneumonia. Remember when David left because you were never home? I remembered. My ex-husband's words still echoed. You're married to that company, not me. You trained that entire management team, Linda continued, refilling her glass aggressively. Jessica Mills couldn't even use Excel when she started. You taught her everything. And she sat there today, dismissing me like I was nothing. The wine turned sour in my stomach. I excused myself to the bathroom and caught my reflection in the mirror. 43 years old. Gray streaking through brown hair I'd stopped coloring to save money. Lines around my eyes from squinting at spreadsheets. When had I become so invisible? The next days blurred together. I updated my resume, that archaeological document that hadn't been touched since 2004. How do you summarize 20 years of dedication? Experienced financial operations manager seeking new opportunities. The generic phrase mocked me. I applied for positions, each online application feeling like shouting into the void. Auto-responses thanked me for my interest. Recruiters half my age called, their voices chirping about exciting opportunities that paid 60% of my previous salary with no benefits. Maybe you could try something new, Emma suggested one evening, her optimism forced. Consulting? Freelancing? With what clients? My entire network is Northbridge. The rejection emails started arriving. While your qualifications are impressive, we've decided to move forward with other candidates. Not a good fit at this time. Translation: you're too old, too expensive, too much of everything we don't want. My sleep fractured. I'd wake at 3 a.m., my mind racing through bills, deadlines, the diminishing numbers in my bank account. The apartment felt smaller, the walls pressing in. I started avoiding mirrors, unable to face the woman I'd become, unemployed, unwanted, unnecessary. 2 weeks after the firing, I ran into Pete Morrison at the grocery store. Pete had been laid off from Northbridge 6 months earlier, another restructuring casualty. Clara heard what happened. Bastards, aren't they? I nodded, trying to hide the generic cereal in my cart, the kind I'd sworn I'd never buy. You know. Pete lowered his voice, glancing around the frozen foods aisle. There were rumors before I left about Northbridge, things that didn't add up. What kind of things? Numbers that didn't match, clients that existed only on paper. I mentioned it once to Marcus, and 2 weeks later, I was out. He shook his head. 20 years for you, right? You probably saw more than any of us. That night, I lay awake thinking about Pete's words. Things that didn't add up. In 20 years, I'd seen plenty that hadn't added up, but I'd been good, loyal Clara who minded her own business, who didn't ask questions, who trusted the system. Look where that had gotten me. The anger that had been simmering since that Tuesday morning began to crystallize into something harder, sharper. They'd taken everything from me, my livelihood, my security, my daughter's future. They'd discarded me like trash. But Pete was right. I had seen things. 20 years of things. And maybe, just maybe, it was time to stop being good, loyal Clara. Pete's words haunted me. That night, I found myself scrolling through old work files I'd backed up on my personal drive, a violation of company policy. But after 15 years, the lines between personal and professional had blurred. Spreadsheets, reports, presentations. My entire career digitized into neat folders. Then I found it, a folder labeled Discrepancies I'd created 3 years ago. Back then, I'd noticed irregularities in our quarterly reports, numbers that shifted between internal documents and client presentations, accounts that appeared and disappeared, transactions routed through subsidiaries that existed only as addresses in the Cayman Islands. I'd mentioned it once to Jessica Mills. Focus on your own department, Clara, she'd said, her smile razor sharp. Some things are above your pay grade. So I'd stayed quiet, good employee that I was. But I'd kept the files. Now, unemployed in my dimly lit apartment at 2 a.m., those discrepancies took on new meaning. The Hartley Group account, $2.3 million transferred monthly. Yet I'd never seen a single Hartley representative in our offices. Pinnacle Investments, their reported assets had doubled overnight in 2019 with no explanation. Smaller things too. Executive bonuses paid from accounts that didn't appear in our official audits. Consulting fees to companies that had no web presence, no phone numbers, nothing. My phone rang, startling me. Unknown number. Clara. A woman's voice, hushed, nervous. This is Sophia Rodriguez, from accounting. I remembered her, quiet, meticulous, hired straight from college 5 years ago. Sophia, it's late. What's wrong? I heard what they did to you. It's not right. You were one of the good ones. She paused. Can we meet? Not over the phone. Tomorrow, the coffee shop on 8th Street. The line went dead. The next morning, Sophia sat hunched in a corner booth, baseball cap pulled low, looking nothing like the polished professional I remembered. She slid a flash drive across the table. I'm quitting tomorrow, she whispered. Moving back to Texas. But you deserve to know why they really fired you. What do you mean? Last month, you flagged that Wellington transfer. Remember? The $3.8 million that didn't match our books? I nodded. It had been a routine catch, the kind of discrepancy I'd spotted hundreds of times over the years. Marcus went ballistic, said you were getting too comfortable with the numbers, seeing too much. Jessica argued you were a liability. Sophia's hands trembled around her coffee cup. They needed someone who wouldn't notice, or wouldn't care. You're saying they fired me because I was doing my job? They fired you because you were doing it too well. She stood abruptly. That drive has everything I could safely copy. Be careful, Clara. These people. They're not who you think they are. Back home, I plugged in the drive with shaking hands. File after file of financial records, emails, internal memos. The deeper I dug, the clearer the picture became. Northbridge wasn't just cooking books. They were running a massive money laundering operation. Shell companies, phantom transactions, millions flowing from questionable sources through our legitimate business accounts. One email thread made my blood run cold. Marcus to someone identified only as J.K. Whitmore is becoming a problem. Too many questions about Wellington. Handle it. Jessica's response, already in motion. Restructuring announcement next week. They'd planned my termination the moment I'd spotted that discrepancy. I called Linda. I need you to come over, now. She arrived to find me surrounded by printouts, my laptop screen filled with financial records, my coffee table converted into a war room. Clara, what is all this? Evidence, I said, showing her the connections I'd mapped out. Northbridge is laundering money, millions, maybe hundreds of millions. Linda went pale. You need to go to the FBI? With what? Files I technically stole. They'll destroy me in court. I need more. This is dangerous, Clara. If they fired you just for noticing, they took everything from me. My voice surprised me with its steadiness. My job, my dignity, my daughter's future. They think I'll quietly disappear like Pete. Like all the others they've discarded. Over the next week, I became someone I didn't recognize. I reached out to former employees, the ones who'd been restructured over the past 5 years. Each had a piece of the puzzle. Anthony from IT talked about encrypted servers he wasn't allowed to access. Marie from legal mentioned contracts that disappeared from the system. Derek from client relations had a list of companies that paid millions but never used our services. The picture that emerged was staggering. Northbridge was washing money for cartels, arms dealers, human traffickers, anyone willing to pay their premium. The executives weren't just complicit, they were the architects. My phone buzzed constantly now. Unknown numbers I didn't answer. A car parked outside my building for 3 days straight. They were watching, waiting to see what Clara Whitmore, the good loyal employee, would do. Emma noticed my transformation. Mom, you're scaring me. What are you doing? Something I should have done years ago, I replied, adding another connection to my growing web of evidence. Standing up. But standing up meant risking everything. If I exposed them, they'd come after me legally, maybe worse. If I stayed quiet, they'd continue destroying lives while I struggled to pay rent. The anger that had sustained me began mixing with fear. I was one woman against a criminal empire. They had lawyers, connections, resources. I had a flash drive and a folder of discrepancies, but I also had 20 years of insider knowledge. And unlike them, I had nothing left to lose. The pieces started falling into place like dominoes in reverse, building a tower of corruption I'd been too blind to see for 20 years. It began with a phone call at 2 a.m. No caller ID. I almost didn't answer. But something made me pick up. Heavy breathing, then a distorted voice. Check the Cayman accounts from 2019, Project Lighthouse. The line went dead. My hands trembled as I wrote down those words in the darkness. I'd handled Project Lighthouse myself 5 years ago. Back then, it seemed like a standard offshore investment structure for tax optimization. Legal, if aggressive, but now unemployed and angry. I saw it differently. The routing patterns, the shell companies with generic names like Global Solutions LLC and International Holdings Group, they weren't just avoiding taxes. They were washing something. My home office became a war room. 20 years of saved emails, downloaded reports, and photographed documents, habits from an era before cloud storage, suddenly transformed into weapons. I spread everything across my dining table, connecting threads with red yarn like some conspiracy theorist. Except this wasn't theory anymore. The pattern emerged slowly. Every quarter, massive sums flowed through Northbridge's books, disguised as consulting fees and strategic partnerships. But I knew those partners. Half didn't exist beyond a mailbox in Delaware. The others traced back to a web of companies owned by Vincent Corelli, a name that made my blood freeze. Everyone in finance knew Corelli's reputation, construction, waste management, and rumors of much darker enterprises. An encrypted email arrived Thursday night, no subject line, just an attachment. Internal communications between CEO Marcus Webb and CFO Diana Morrison. They discussed cleaning $50 million monthly, taking their cut, and keeping the board ignorant. One phrase stopped my heart. If Whitmore had dug any deeper, we'd have had to handle her differently. Handle me differently. The words echoed as I realized my firing wasn't about restructuring. It was about silencing a potential threat. More evidence arrived mysteriously. USB drives in my mailbox. Anonymous uploads to a secure cloud folder someone had created in my name. Former colleagues who'd been laid off over the years were reaching out, sharing their pieces of the puzzle. Northbridge wasn't just laundering money, they were fabricating entire departments, billing government contracts for phantom employees, and siphoning pandemic relief funds meant for struggling businesses. The scale was staggering. Conservative estimate, $2 billion in fraudulent transactions over the past decade. Every bonus I'd received, every company celebration, every corporate charity event, all funded by blood money. I documented everything meticulously, creating multiple backups, encrypted copies stored in different locations. The paranoid habits they'd mocked me for, keeping paper trails, taking photos of suspicious documents, now felt like providence. 20 years of unconscious evidence gathering, waiting for this moment. My phone buzzed, unknown number. The text simply read, "They know you know. You have 48 hours before they move. Use them wisely." Looking at the mountain of evidence spread before me, I felt the fear transform into something else. Power. For the first time in 20 years, I held their futures in my hands. The question wasn't whether to destroy them anymore, it was how to make it hurt the most. 48 hours. That's all I had before they came for me. I moved fast, methodically. First, I hired Rebecca Thornton, a whistleblower attorney known for taking down Fortune 500 companies. Our meeting happened in a parking garage at dawn. Her choice, not mine. She reviewed my evidence for 30 minutes in silence, then looked up with eyes that gleamed like a predator's. "This is enough to bury them 10 times over. But we need to move strategically. They have resources to make you disappear." She was right. I'd already noticed the black sedan parked outside my apartment building, the same one that followed me to the grocery store. My phone had developed strange clicking sounds during calls. They were watching, waiting to see what I'd do. Rebecca arranged safe houses, switching my location every night. I worked from cheap motels and 24-hour diners, uploading evidence to secured servers she'd prepared. We created deadman switches. If anything happened to me, everything would automatically release to every major news outlet in the country. The journalist came next, Sarah Kim from the Washington Herald, winner of 2 Pulitzers for exposing corporate corruption. We met in a church during evening service, passing documents between hymn books. She'd been investigating Northbridge for years, but couldn't crack their shell. My evidence was the missing piece she needed. "This goes live Friday morning," she whispered. "Front page, above the fold. Can you stay safe until then?" 3 days. I had to survive 3 days. The FBI contact was Rebecca's idea. Special Agent David Harrison, Financial Crimes Division. He'd been building a case against Corelli's network for a decade. When he saw my documents, he actually whistled, "Ms. Whitmore, you've just handed me Christmas morning. We can move on this immediately. But I need you to testify. Federal protection, new identity if necessary." I agreed. What else did I have to lose? My career was gone. My reputation would be destroyed either way once Northbridge's lawyers started spinning their narrative. But I could take them down with me. Wednesday night, they made their move. I was leaving a coffee shop when 2 men approached. "Ms. Whitmore, Mr. Webb would like a word." I ran. Through alleys, across traffic, into a shopping mall. They followed. My heart pounded as I ducked into a bathroom, called Rebecca. "They found me. Get to the safe house, now. Don't go home. Don't stop anywhere." But I had one more stop to make. The local news station, where I'd arranged an interview with investigative reporter Tom Bradley. If I was going down, I'd go down swinging. The interview lasted 2 hours. I named names, showed documents on camera, explained the entire money laundering operation. Tom promised to hold it until Friday. synchronized with Sarah's article. Thursday morning, 4 a.m. I sat in an FBI safe house, watching the clock. Everything was in place. The Washington Herald had the story. The FBI had their warrants ready. The local news had their exclusive. Multiple international outlets had received anonymous packages with evidence. I'd seeded the story to financial bloggers, Reddit investigators, Twitter journalists. It would hit from every angle simultaneously. Diana Morrison called my personal cell at noon. I don't know how she got the number. Clara, let's discuss this like adults. You're angry, I understand. But think about what you're doing. You're destroying hundreds of innocent employees' lives. We can make this right. 7 figures to start, plus consulting fees for life. Just walk away. You should have thought about those innocent employees before you turned the company into a criminal enterprise, I said, then hung up. The threats escalated. Text messages with photos of my sister's house, emails detailing my daily routine. A voicemail from Marcus Webb himself. You have no idea what you're dealing with, Clara. These people don't forgive. Even if you destroy us, they'll find you. Is your revenge worth your life? Maybe it wasn't. But justice was. I spent Thursday night in the FBI building, surrounded by agents preparing for Friday's raids. Rebecca sat beside me, reviewing my testimony one last time. Sarah Kim texted updates as her editor gave final approval. Tom Bradley confirmed the morning show slot. At exactly midnight. I sent my final email to the all-staff distribution list at Northbridge. The subject line read, "The truth about your company." I attached everything. Then I waited for dawn. Friday, 3:47 a.m. I sat alone in my dim apartment, having refused the FBI's safe house for this one night. I needed to be here, in my own space, to push the button that would end everything. The laptop screen glowed in the darkness, cursor blinking in the empty field labeled Send. 20 years of my life versus 1 click. My fingers trembled over the trackpad. Everything was queued up, emails to the SEC, the IRS, the Department of Justice, every major newspaper from the New York Times to the local Riverton Gazette. Sarah Kim's article would go live at 6 a.m. Tom Bradley's segment aired at 7. The FBI raids were scheduled for 8, but I controlled the first domino. 4 a.m., I clicked send. The progress bar moved slowly, uploading gigabytes of evidence to dozens of recipients simultaneously. Each percentage point felt like a year of my life being validated. At 100%, a simple message appeared. Messages sent. I leaned back and exhaled 20 years of held breath. My phone exploded with notifications. Journalists confirming receipt, FBI agents mobilizing, Rebecca texting that the whistleblower complaint had been officially filed, the avalanche had begun, and nothing could stop it now. 4:30 a.m. I made coffee with steady hands and sat by my window, watching the city sleep. Somewhere across town, Marcus Webb was probably in his mansion, oblivious. Diana Morrison might be on her morning run. They had no idea their world was about to implode. 5:15 a.m. The first domino fell publicly. A financial blogger in London, where markets were already open, posted. Breaking: massive fraud allegations against Northbridge Financial Solutions. Documents suggest $2 billion money laundering operation. 5:30 a.m. My phone rang. Marcus Webb. Clara, what have you done? His voice cracked, no longer the commanding CEO tone I'd heard for 2 decades. My job, Marcus. The one I should have done years ago? You don't understand the people involved. They'll kill us all, you, me, everyone who knows. Then you should have thought about that before you got in bed with them. I hung up. 5:45 a.m. Twitter exploded. Northbridge scandal began trending. Anonymous accounts started sharing portions of my leaked documents. The financial blogs picked it up, then Reddit, then the international newswires. 6 a.m. Sarah Kim's article went live. The Washington Herald's website crashed from traffic within minutes. She'd done magnificent work, weaving my evidence into a narrative that was both damning and impossible to refute. The headline screamed, "Inside the billion-dollar fraud, how Northbridge Financial became a criminal empire." 6:30 a.m. Local news alerts flooded my phone. Every station in Riverton led with the story. Tom Bradley's exclusive interview teaser played on repeat. Tonight, hear from the whistleblower who brought down Northbridge. 7 a.m. I watched Tom's segment from my couch, wrapped in a blanket, seeing my silhouetted figure on screen. Voice distorted, but words clear. They fired me for knowing too much. They just didn't realize I'd kept the receipts. 7:30 a.m. The markets opened. Northbridge stock plummeted 67% in the first 15 minutes. Trading was halted. CNBC, Bloomberg, Fox Business, every financial channel scrambled to cover the unfolding catastrophe. 7:45 a.m. Diana Morrison's resignation letter leaked. She was trying to flee, to distance herself. Too late. The FBI would be at her door in 15 minutes. 8 a.m. I turned up the volume on my police scanner app. All units to Northbridge Financial Headquarters. Federal warrant service in progress. I closed my eyes and imagined it. FBI agents flooding through those glass doors I'd entered every morning for 20 years. Marcus Webb in handcuffs, doing the perp walk past the executive assistant who'd sneered when security escorted me out. Diana Morrison caught at the private airport, trying to board her jet to the Caymans. 8:30 a.m. My sister called, crying. "Clara, it's on every channel. You did this. You brought them down." "They brought themselves down," I said. "I just turned on the lights." 9 a.m. Rebecca texted, "17 arrests so far. Corelli's organization is scrambling. You've started something bigger than just Northbridge." The sun was fully up now, streaming through my window. I sat in its warmth, feeling something I hadn't felt in months. Peace. Not joy, not triumph, just peace. My phone buzzed with a CNN alert. Breaking. Northbridge Financial executives arrested in massive fraud probe. Whistleblower evidence reveals decade-long money laundering operation. I turned off my phone, closed my laptop, and walked to my kitchen. 20 years ended with a click. An empire fell overnight. I poured another cup of coffee and watched the city wake up to the news, knowing that by tonight, Northbridge Financial Solutions would exist only in federal evidence lockers and criminal indictments. The night was over, so were they. By noon, Northbridge Financial Solutions had ceased to exist as anything more than a crime scene. I watched it all unfold from my apartment, news channels on every screen. CNN showed Marcus Webb being led out in handcuffs, his $1,000 suit wrinkled, his face gray with shock. He looked directly at the camera, and for a moment, I felt like he was looking at me. 20 years I'd worked for that man. 20 years of believing his lies about building something meaningful. The local news caught Diana Morrison at her mansion, FBI agents carrying out boxes of documents. She tried to cover her face, stumbling in her designer heels. The woman who'd smiled while telling me I was no longer aligned with company vision now faced 25 to life. By 2 p.m., the arrest count hit 37. Not just executives, middle managers who'd facilitated transfers, accountants who'd cooked books, even the head of HR who'd systematically silenced anyone who asked questions. The entire corrupt spine of the company ripped out in a single morning. The financial networks ran split screens, Northbridge's stock price flatlining on one side, federal agents raiding offices nationwide on the other. The company value evaporated, $8 billion to worthless in 6 hours. Retirement funds destroyed, investor portfolios decimated. The talking heads called it the fastest corporate collapse in modern history. Vincent Corelli's arrest made international news. They caught him at his compound in Miami. Helicopter footage showing FBI tactical teams surrounding the estate. The man whose money Northbridge had laundered for a decade, finally exposed. His lawyer claimed complete ignorance of any wrongdoing, but the documents I'd provided said otherwise. Every transaction, every communication, every dirty dollar tracked and traced. My phone hadn't stopped ringing. Reporters offering 6 figures for exclusive interviews, movie producers wanting rights to my story, book publishers promising seven-figure advances. I ignored them all. This wasn't about money or fame. It never was. At 4 p.m., an emergency broadcast interrupted regular programming. The Attorney General herself held a press conference, announcing the largest financial fraud prosecution in U.S. history. This case demonstrates that no corporation is above the law, she declared. We owe a debt of gratitude to the brave whistleblower who risked everything to expose this criminal enterprise. The brave whistleblower. If only she knew I was sitting in my pajamas, eating cereal from the box, feeling nothing but hollow vindication. Former co-workers started reaching out, some thanking me. They'd suspected something was wrong but never had proof. Others cursing me. Their jobs gone, stock options worthless, futures destroyed. I understood both reactions. In bringing down the guilty, I'd inevitably hurt the innocent. That weight would stay with me forever. The Riverton Evening News led with aerial footage of Northbridge headquarters. Empty. Dark. Yellow FBI tape across every entrance. The parking lot that once held luxury cars now filled with federal vans. The building itself looked like a corpse, all glass and steel with no soul inside. Tom Bradley's evening segment featured finance experts analyzing the fallout. This isn't just about one company, a professor explained. Northbridge was connected to dozens of other firms. This will trigger investigations across the entire financial sector. By 8 p.m., the late-night comedians were already writing jokes. Social media had turned Marcus Webb into a meme. Northbridge collapse trended worldwide. The company that had seemed so powerful, so untouchable, had become a punchline in less than a day. I received a text from Rebecca. Final count, 52 arrests, $2.3 billion in assets frozen, 5 countries coordinating investigations. You didn't just bring down a company, Clara. You brought down an empire. An empire. Built on lies, maintained through intimidation, destroyed by truth. The news kept playing footage of the raids, the arrests, the collapse. Each loop showed another angle of devastation. The trading floor abandoned. The executive suite sealed off. The company gym where Marcus used to brag about his connections. Now a crime scene. At midnight. I turned off all the screens. The silence felt strange after a day of constant breaking news. I walked to my window and looked out at Riverton's skyline. The Northbridge building stood dark against the city lights. A monument to greed brought low. 20 years I'd given them. They'd taken my dedication, my expertise, my loyalty, and thrown it away when I became inconvenient. They thought they'd discarded a nobody, someone who'd disappear quietly into unemployment and shame. They never imagined that nobody had kept every receipt, every email, every piece of evidence that would end them. The empire they'd built over decades had collapsed in a single day. And I'd done it with nothing but the truth and a laptop, sitting in my pajamas, drinking cold coffee. Tomorrow, the investigations would deepen. More arrests would come. The trials would begin. But tonight, Northbridge Financial Solutions was dead. And I was its executioner. Saturday morning, the day after the apocalypse. I stood in my living room, still in yesterday's clothes, watching the sun rise over a changed world. The TV played on mute. Marcus Webb's mugshot, Diana Morrison's tears, the empty Northbridge building like a gutted fish. But I wasn't really watching anymore. My phone sat silent on the coffee table. I'd turned off all notifications. The reporters, the producers, the book agents, they could wait. Maybe forever. This was never about becoming famous or rich. It was about something simpler and more complex. Justice. 20 years. That number kept echoing in my mind. 20 years of birthdays missed for quarterly reports. 20 years of postponed vacations for urgent meetings. 20 years of believing I was building something meaningful, only to discover I'd been constructing my own prison. The strange thing about revenge is how quiet it is when it finally arrives. I'd imagined feeling triumphant, maybe even gleeful. Instead, I felt empty. Not sad, not happy, just empty. like I'd been carrying a boulder for so long that now, without its weight, I didn't know how to stand properly. My sister came by with coffee and bagels. We sat in silence for a while, watching the news cycle repeat the same footage, the same shocked interviews with employees who'd had no idea what their company really was. "Do you regret it?" she asked finally. I thought about the question, about the 3,000 employees now jobless, about the investors who'd lost everything, about the clients who'd trusted Northbridge with their futures. Innocent people caught in the crossfire of my revenge. "No," I said. "I regret not doing it sooner." Because here's what I'd learned in those dark hours between humiliation and revenge. Sometimes the only way to stop a cancer is to cut it out entirely. Yes, healthy tissue gets damaged. Yes, the recovery is painful. But leaving it to spread would have been worse. Rebecca called in the afternoon. The FBI wanted to put me in witness protection until the trials were over. Vincent Corelli's people were making threats. I declined. If they wanted to come for me, let them come. I'd already lost everything that mattered. What was left to protect? I spent the evening packing up 20 years of career memorabilia, awards for excellence that now felt like jokes, team photos with people who'd been criminals all along, a crystal paperweight Marcus had given me at my 15-year anniversary, engraved with "Loyalty above all." I threw it all in the trash. Sunday morning, I walked past the Northbridge building one last time. FBI agents still guarded the entrances. News vans still circled like vultures. But the building itself stood silent. A 50-story tombstone for an empire built on lies. I thought about Clara Whitmore, who'd walked through those doors 20 years ago, young and eager, ready to conquer the corporate world. She'd died the day they fired her. What stood here now was something else. Not a victim, not a hero. Just a woman who'd learned that sometimes burning it all down is the only way forward. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Thank you. My husband killed himself after Northbridge destroyed his company in a hostile takeover. Seeing them fall. Thank you." Another. "You saved us. We were about to invest our entire pension fund with them." And another. "You're a hero." Hero. The word felt wrong. Heroes save people. I'd simply destroyed the people who'd destroyed me. If that saved others in the process, it was just collateral benefit to my collateral damage. I stood there as the sun set behind the dead building, painting its windows red like blood. Tomorrow, the news cycle would move on. New scandals would emerge. Northbridge would become a cautionary tale told in business schools, a Wikipedia entry about corporate corruption. But for me, it would always be more than that. It was proof that one person, armed with nothing but truth and fury, could bring down giants. That 20 years of dedication, when betrayed, could become 20 years of ammunition. That sometimes, just sometimes, David doesn't need a sling to kill Goliath, just a laptop and the courage to hit send. I turned away from the building and walked into my new life, whatever that would be. Behind me, the Northbridge Tower stood dark against the evening sky, a monument to the night I destroyed an empire with nothing but the truth. They'd fired me after 20 years. I'd erased them in one night. I'd call that severance well earned. Thank you for listening to this story of corporate revenge and justice served cold. If you're listening to this tale right now, I'd love to know where in the world you're tuning in from. Drop a comment below and let's connect. Please subscribe to the channel if you enjoyed this story, and share your thoughts about Clara's journey. What would you have done in her position? Your perspectives make these stories come alive.